The Grand Hall of the Galactic Council buzzed with activity as representatives of dozens of alien species debated humanity's fate. Massive pillars adorned with glowing patterns of different civilizations loomed over the chamber. In the center stood Earth's ambassador, Dr. Eleanor Hayes, her face a mix of defiance and desperation. "Humanity is innocent," Eleanor declared, her voice echoing in the vast chamber. "We did not violate the peace treaty. This is a deliberate attempt to frame us. We demand a fair trial." But the council was unmoved. At the head of the room sat Chancellor Vorleth, a towering creature with scales that shimmered like oil and eyes that gleamed with cold indifference. He raised a clawed hand to silence her. "The evidence against humanity is overwhelming," he said, his voice as smooth as a predator's growl. "Your species has shown itself to be dangerous and unpredictable. The destruction of the Mylarian outpost cannot be ignored." "It wasn't us," Eleanor protested. "The attack was orchestrated to make us look guilty. You know this." Vorleth's gaze swept the chamber. "The council has deliberated. Humanity will be exiled to Vexus 3, a classified Type Red death world. Effective immediately." Gasps and murmurs rippled through the audience. A Type Red death world. That was a death sentence. Vexus 3 was infamous, a planet with relentless storms, toxic air, and creatures so deadly even the most advanced species avoided it. Eleanor clenched her fists. "This is not justice. This is genocide." A representative from the sleek and bird-like Acrolus race chirped coldly. "Your species brought this upon yourselves. Humanity's aggression is a threat to galactic stability. If you survive, perhaps you will learn humility." But there was no intention for survival, and everyone knew it. The council didn't just want humanity punished. They wanted them erased. Aboard the transport ships, the humans were silent as they hurtled through space toward their doom. Military officers, scientists, engineers, and civilians, all selected in haste, tried to process what had happened. Commander Julian Steele stood at the observation deck, his jaw tight as he stared at the looming planet. "We're being thrown away like garbage," he muttered. Beside him, Dr. Annika Patel, a biologist, adjusted her glasses. "They think we'll die down there. That's why they picked Vexus 3. No species has ever survived." Steele's eyes narrowed. "They underestimate us. They've always underestimated us." The descent to Vexus 3 was anything but smooth. The ship was battered by violent winds, and visibility was nearly zero. Lightning arced across the dense, reddish clouds, illuminating the jagged mountain peaks below. When the ship finally landed, it wasn't a landing at all. It was a crash. The survivors stumbled out, coughing as they adjusted their breathing masks. The air was thick with the smell of sulfur, and the ground was an eerie mix of ash and sharp crystalline formations. Strange growls and screeches echoed in the distance. Steele surveyed the surroundings. "Everyone, stay together. Weapons up. We don't know what's out there." The group moved cautiously, setting up a temporary camp near the wreckage. They salvaged what they could, tools, weapons, and supplies, but the atmosphere was heavy with despair. Then the first attack came. Out of the shadows leaped a creature that defied logic, a blend of insect, lizard, and nightmare. Its scales shimmered with a metallic sheen, and its claws sliced through metal like butter. The humans fired their energy weapons, but the creature seemed impervious. It lunged, taking down one of the soldiers before Steele managed a lucky shot to its eye, killing it. Dr. Paddle examined the corpse. "It's biology. It's like nothing I've ever seen. Every part of it is designed to kill." Steele wiped the blood from his face. "Then we'll design something better. We don't have a choice." Back on the Galactic Council station, Chancellor Vorleth watched the feed from the observation satellite. The humans' first encounter with the Death World was exactly as he had expected: chaos and bloodshed. "They won't last a month," said one of the council members, a tentacled creature whose voice bubbled like liquid. Vorleth nodded, satisfied. "This is the end of humanity. a fitting punishment for their arrogance. But the screen flickered, showing the humans regrouping. They weren't retreating. Instead, they were scavenging parts from the wreckage, setting up defenses, and already studying the planet's environment. Vorlath's eyes narrowed. Interesting. They're more resourceful than I anticipated. Back on Vexus 3, the humans worked tirelessly. Temporary shelters became fortified structures. Makeshift labs sprang up where scientists like Dr. Patel studied the local flora and fauna, finding ways to turn the planet's dangers into advantages. One night, Steele addressed the group. We're not just surviving here. We're going to make this planet ours. They think they've condemned us. But they've forgotten one thing. A soldier raised an eyebrow. What's that? Steele's expression hardened. We're human, and we don't quit. The crowd erupted into cheers. Their spirits lifted. Against all odds, hope began to grow. In the distance, lightning struck, illuminating the monstrous silhouettes of the planet's predators. The humans weren't afraid anymore. They were ready. The first week on Vexus 3 had been a blur of pain, fear, and desperation. The stormy skies raged constantly, and the ground was a hostile wasteland filled with dangers at every turn. Yet, against all expectations, humanity had begun to adapt. Commander Julian Steele stood on a hill overlooking the growing settlement. The camp, once a collection of scattered survivors, was now an organized stronghold. Temporary shelters had been reinforced, walls built from salvaged wreckage, and weapons were fashioned from scrap materials. The humans had turned the planet's hostile environment into an ally, using everything it threw at them as a resource. "How's the power grid coming along, Lieutenant?" Steele asked, his voice steady despite the ever-present tension in the air. Lieutenant Karen Fox, the team's engineer, was standing next to a makeshift generator, her hands moving swiftly to adjust the machinery. "It's running better than expected, sir. We've been able to convert the planet's geothermal heat into energy. We have enough to power basic life support systems for now." Steele nodded in approval. "Good. We're going to need every bit of energy we can get." He surveyed the land ahead, his mind already running through the next steps. "We need to secure a larger area and start growing food. No one's going to survive long on rations alone." In the camp's makeshift laboratory, Dr. Annika Patel and a small team of biologists were studying the local flora and fauna. The planet's environment was toxic to most, but Patel had already begun to make shocking discoveries. There were plants here that could filter the air and produce oxygen, and a type of fungus that could be used as a food source if properly cultivated. "We might actually be able to make this work," Patel said to her colleague, Dr. Raj Singh, as she observed a petri dish filled with spores from the fungus. "This could be our key to surviving long-term." "That's if it doesn't kill us first," Raj replied with a dry chuckle. Despite the danger, his eyes showed a flicker of hope. Patel smiled, shaking her head. "We'll make it work. Humans always do." The next few days were filled with challenges. The settlement had to be expanded to include farming plots and more fortified structures. Steele, Fox, Patel, and the others worked long hours, barely resting. But despite the exhaustion, morale began to rise. The once feeble humans had discovered their resourcefulness and began to thrive. It wasn't just the environment they were mastering. The planet's wildlife, previously viewed as deadly monsters, became a source of strength. Several species of creatures were fierce and aggressive, but they could also be tamed. Humans, by nature, were survivors, and it showed. One day, while exploring the outskirts of the settlement, Sergeant Alicia Cruz came across a large, strange creature. It resembled a mix between a wolf and a rhinoceros, with thick armored skin and vicious claws. Most would have fled in fear, but Alicia, armed with a homemade stun gun, approached cautiously. The creature growled at her, but rather than attacking, it seemed curious. Alicia's training kicked in. She lowered her weapon slowly, taking a risk. To her surprise, the creature didn't attack. Instead, it seemed to calm down, allowing Alicia to get closer. She reached out and touched the beast's thick hide. It's tammable, she whispered to herself in disbelief. Back at the camp, the humans experimented with domesticating the planet's creatures. They discovered that the beasts, though dangerous, could be trained with patience and care. The humans didn't just fight the creatures, they learned from them, forming partnerships that helped with hunting, transport, and even defense. As time passed, the settlement flourished. The humans learned to live off the land and tame the planet's savage inhabitants. The farms began to grow, producing food they could eat, and the wildlife became integral to their survival. It wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about building something new. One night, Steele stood outside the camp, staring at the stars above. The sky was dark, lit only by the faint glow of distant galaxies. The silence of the planet was deafening, and yet Steele couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching them. "Commander," Fox said, walking up behind him, "I've been thinking about something. We've survived here longer than any other species ever has. I know the Council believes we'll fail, but we're proving them wrong. What if we could do more than just survive? What if we could use this place to our advantage?" Steele turned to her, his face lit by the faint light of the distant stars. "You mean?" Fox smiled, her eyes bright with determination. "What if we turned this planet into a weapon that could change the balance of power in the galaxy?" Steele thought about it for a long moment. The idea was risky, almost impossible. But then again, humanity had never been afraid of impossible odds. "You might be onto something, Fox," he said finally. "We could use everything we've learned here, everything we've become, and show the galaxy that they made a grave mistake by underestimating us." Back at the Galactic Council, the leaders were already beginning to notice the reports from Vexus 3. At first, they thought it was a fluke. The humans couldn't possibly survive. But as the weeks passed, they realized something more terrifying. Humanity wasn't just surviving. They were thriving. Vorlath, the Council's cold, calculating leader, leaned back in his chair, watching the feed from Vexus 3. "This is unexpected," he muttered. "They've adapted too quickly. It's as if the planet itself is starting to bend to their will." A council member, a large, squid-like alien, nodded gravely. "Perhaps we underestimated them. They have a resilience we didn't anticipate." Vorlath's eyes narrowed. "Then we must act. It's clear they are not the easy prey we thought they were. We cannot allow them to gain strength." He turned to the others. "Prepare a new strategy. It's time to finish what we started." Back on Vexus 3, the humans were unaware of the Council's growing concern. They were too focused on their new life, their new purpose. They weren't just surviving. They were starting to believe they could conquer anything, even the galaxy itself. Back at the Galactic Council station, the atmosphere was tense. Leaders from various species gathered in the council chamber, their faces twisted with concern. The images of humans thriving on Vexus 3 had spread across the galaxy, and the Council was starting to realize that their plan to eliminate humanity might not work as easily as they had hoped. Chancellor Vorlath paced back and forth, his long tail flicking behind him. His claws clicked against the smooth floor with every step. "They should have been dead by now," he muttered to himself. "How are they surviving this?" A tall, multi-eyed alien known as Styrix, a representative from the insectoid Xatheri race, leaned forward. "We underestimated them. We thought Vexus 3 would be their grave. But instead, they've turned it into a fortress." Vorlath stopped pacing and glared at the screen showing the human settlement. The humans had built walls, planted crops, and tamed the deadly creatures of the planet. They were thriving. Their adaptability is incredible. How are they doing this? The planet was meant to be impossible to conquer. "There's more," another voice interrupted. It was Tylus, a grumpy engineer from the Hoxian species. "Our surveillance shows they've begun using the local predators as tools. They've even tamed that massive creature, the Grothok. It's unimaginable." Vorlath clenched his fists. "If they keep this up, they might even turn this world into a weapon. We can't allow that." Meanwhile, on Vexus 3, Commander Julian Steele and his team had no idea that the Council was already planning their next move. They were too busy focusing on their survival and the future they were building. "We've made progress, but we're not done yet," Steele said as he surveyed the settlement. The walls were stronger now, made from metal and rock, scavenged from their ships and the planet's debris. The farms were growing better, and the food supply was stable. But they weren't taking any chances. They knew that the planet was still dangerous, and it wasn't just the environment they had to worry about. "The Grothok is settling in well," Sergeant Alicia Cruz said, walking up beside Steele. "It's huge, but it listens to us. We've started using it for patrols. It's been a game changer." Steele nodded, impressed. "Good. If we can keep using the planet's dangers to our advantage, we'll stay one step ahead. We need every edge we can get." One evening, as the settlement was busy with preparations for the coming weeks, a scout named Captain Tyler Reed returned with urgent news. His face was grim, and he moved quickly toward Steele. "Commander, we've got something," Reed said, holding up a small handheld device. On the screen, an image of a strange metallic object flashed. "We found an ancient structure, could be a remnant of a civilization, that once tried to survive here." Steele's eyes lit up with interest. "A structure. That could be what we need to understand this planet better." Reed nodded. "It's hidden deep in the forest, just beyond the western ridge. It's definitely not natural." "Gather a team," Steele ordered. "We're going there at first light." The next day, Steele, Reed, Cruz, and a few others set out on foot toward the mysterious structure. They trekked through dense, alien forests, their weapons at the ready. The journey was long and treacherous, but they finally arrived at the site in the late afternoon. What they discovered was both beautiful and haunting. The structure appeared to be a vast ruin, with high stone walls covered in intricate carvings. The architecture was unlike anything Steele had ever seen, alien yet familiar. It was clear that whoever had built it had mastered advanced technology, but the civilization was long gone. "Looks like this place has been abandoned for centuries," Cruz remarked as she ran her fingers over the carvings. "But there's something about this. It feels like it was meant to keep something in." Reed stepped forward, inspecting the entrance. "The door's been sealed shut, but I think I can get it open." He fiddled with a panel next to the door, tapping a series of symbols. After a few moments, there was a soft click, and the massive door slowly creaked open. Inside was a dimly lit chamber, filled with strange machinery and data crystals. The air was thick with dust, but there was a sense of eerie silence. Steele stepped inside, his flashlight scanning the room. "What is this?" he muttered to himself. On the far wall, a large holographic screen flickered to life as they entered the room. A series of images flashed before them, scenes of a great battle, alien species fighting for control of the planet. The images showed the destruction of entire cities, and then the planet itself seemed to turn on its inhabitants. "It looks like this planet has seen war," Steele said quietly, watching the destruction unfold on the screen. "But what did they fight over?" Reed inspected the nearby data crystals, carefully extracting one and slotting it into a portable reader. "There's a message here. It's in a language I don't recognize, but I can decipher it." As Reed worked, Steele looked around the chamber. The walls were lined with mysterious symbols, symbols that seemed to be warnings, as if the planet itself was alive and had fought back against its previous inhabitants. Back at the council station, the leaders were growing more concerned. Their plan had not worked. Humanity was adapting far faster than they could have anticipated. "We need to act now," Vorlaf growled, slamming his clawed hand onto the table. "We can't let them learn from these ruins. We need to send a team to eliminate them before they discover something that gives them an advantage." Tylus nodded. "They are too resourceful, but if we strike now, we may still have the upper hand." Vorlaf turned toward the view screen, his eyes narrowing. "Prepare the fleet. We'll make sure they never get the chance to challenge us." As Steele and his team continued to explore the ruins, a new threat was on its way. The Council had made its decision, and humanity's time on Vexus 3 might be coming to an end. But the humans had learned one thing. They weren't just surviving on this death world. They were evolving. The ruins of the ancient structure were an incredible discovery, but for Commander Julian Steele and his team, there was little time to celebrate. The holographic images they'd uncovered showed a planet that had once been home to a powerful, technologically advanced civilization. But it was clear that the planet itself had fought back, turning against its inhabitants in a violent uprising. What happened to them? Dr. Anika Patil asked as she analyzed the data crystals, her eyes scanning the intricate symbols that had been left behind. They must have been incredibly advanced to build all of this, but something triggered their downfall. Steele stood near the entrance of the chamber, keeping watch as Reed continued to decode the data. "It doesn't matter what happened to them," Steele said with a grim expression. "What matters is that this planet is dangerous. We've already seen that firsthand." The humans' efforts to establish a stable foothold on Vexus 3 had not gone unnoticed. Back at the Galactic Council, the leaders were growing increasingly frustrated. The planet's surveillance systems were designed to watch, not to intervene, but now it was clear that something more drastic would need to be done. Vorlath, the Chancellor of the Galactic Council, stared at the data coming in from the monitoring satellites. The humans had managed to survive against all odds. Worse, they were becoming stronger. The planet's creatures were no longer just threats. They were allies. The humans were using them for defense, transportation, and even as sources of food. "We can't allow them to continue growing," Vorlath muttered to himself. "If they discover the secrets hidden in these ruins, it will be a disaster for all of us." "Shall we send a fleet?" suggested Shyrix, the Tathuri representative. His many eyes blinked as he spoke, his voice full of concern. "They might be learning too much. They could become a threat to the entire galaxy." Vorlath thought for a moment before nodding. "Prepare the fleet. We'll end this now." Back on Vexus 3, Steele had a troubling thought as he looked out over the settlement. The walls were stronger, the farms more productive, and the Grothok beasts had become valuable tools. But he couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. "We need to send more scouts out," Steele told Lieutenant Karen Fox, who was nearby working on new plans to fortify their position. "I don't trust the silence. Something feels off." Fox raised an eyebrow. "The Grothoks are out on patrol, and the perimeter's secure. What's bothering you, Commander?" Steele ran a hand through his hair. "I don't know. It's just a feeling. We've survived the storms, the creatures, and all the dangers this planet can throw at us. But we can't forget we're still alone here. The Council is watching, and they won't let us thrive for long." Later that evening, as the human settlement prepared for another night, Steele gathered his senior officers. The mood was serious, with everyone aware that something larger was at play. They had already made it clear they wouldn't be easy targets for the Galactic Council, but what was coming next? "Listen up," Steele began. "The Council won't stop coming after us. The technology we found in those ruins could be a game changer. If we figure out how to use it, we might stand a chance against them." Dr. Patil raised her hand. "But the ancient civilization, they didn't just leave their tech behind. It seems like they sealed something away here, something they were trying to keep hidden. The machines inside the ruins are still active. There's a reason why they didn't want anyone to find them." Steele looked at her. "What kind of machines?" "We don't know yet," Patil replied. "But they're unlike anything we've seen. Some kind of weapon systems, maybe, or even a way to control the planet's hostile forces. I need more time to study the data." Steele's eyes hardened. "You don't have much time. We've got a feeling they're preparing for something big. And if they want to wipe us out, we need to be ready." The next morning, Steele's team set out for the ruins again. They had uncovered enough to know that something dangerous was hidden within the ancient structure. As they made their way through the dense alien forest, The eerie quiet of the planet hung heavy over them. The Grothok beasts patrolled ahead, their massive forms making the underbrush tremble as they passed. As they reached the ruins, Reed and Paddle quickly got to work, focusing on extracting more information from the data crystals and the machinery hidden inside. The sound of their equipment hummed in the background, but Steele remained on alert, scanning the horizon for any signs of trouble. It was then that they heard something. A low, rumbling noise echoed through the forest, growing louder with each passing second. Steele's eyes widened. "Get ready. Something's coming," he said, grabbing his weapon. Suddenly, the trees around them shook as a massive shadow appeared on the horizon. A fleet of ships, far too large to be friendly, descended through the clouds. They were sleek and black, their shapes almost insectoid as they hovered ominously over the land. The Galactic Council had arrived. Steele's heart raced. He had known it would come to this, but seeing the fleet in the sky confirmed it. The humans were under attack. "We need to get back to the settlement now," Steele shouted, turning toward the others. But it was too late. From the forest's edge, the first wave of assault drones emerged, buzzing like a swarm of angry bees. They were fast, efficient, and deadly. Precisely what Steele had feared. They were here to wipe them out. Back at the settlement, chaos erupted as the drones descended upon them. The humans fought back, using their tamed beasts and makeshift weapons to defend their home. But the drones were relentless, and they had the numbers. Steele's voice crackled over the radio. "Fall back to the central compound. Protect the tech. We can't let them get their hands on those ruins." The battle had begun, and it was clear. The war for survival on Vexus 3 had only just started. The battle began as soon as the first wave of drones descended from the sky. Their sleek, dark shapes hovered menacingly over the settlement, and their whirring noise filled the air. It wasn't just an attack. It was an invasion. Commander Julian Steele had expected this, but nothing could prepare him for the sheer speed and power of the assault. His voice rang out over the comms system, filled with urgency. "Everyone, fall back to the central compound. Protect the data. We cannot let them take those ruins." The human defenders scrambled into action. The tamed Grothok beasts roared as they charged into the fray, their massive forms plowing through the dense underbrush toward the incoming drones. Some of the humans fired their weapons, but the drones were fast and agile, dodging shots and retaliating with laser fire that tore through the makeshift walls of the settlement. "We need more cover," Lieutenant Karen Fox shouted, pulling out her rifle and shooting down a drone that was making a direct path toward their position. But the drones kept coming, swarming like a cloud of angry hornets. Steele ran alongside her, his mind racing. "We're outnumbered. We need to regroup and find a way to disable their ships. If we don't, we're finished." Fox nodded grimly, her eyes scanning the horizon. "I'll lead a team to the eastern wall. We'll try to slow them down. But, Commander, we can't fight them all." "I know," Steele said, "but we fight until we can't anymore." As Steele and his team fell back to the central compound, Dr. Annika Patel and her team scrambled to secure the data crystals and the valuable technology they had uncovered from the ruins. They had no choice but to protect the knowledge. They couldn't let the Council gain access to the secrets of the ancient civilization. Patel was sitting at a small workstation, her fingers flying over the keyboard as she accessed the data stored on the crystals. This technology could be the key to defeating them, she said under her breath. She had already started deciphering the symbols, and she could feel her excitement growing. "If I can just understand how they used this." A loud crash interrupted her thoughts. The building shook, and a sudden burst of energy from outside knocked the power offline. The lights flickered before completely going out, leaving the room in total darkness. "Dr. Patel." Lieutenant Fox's voice came through the comms. "We've got a serious breach. The drones are getting too close. We need to get that tech out of here." Patel cursed under her breath. "I'm not leaving without these data crystals. We need them to stand a chance." She quickly grabbed the crystals, stuffing them into a secure container and locking it shut. "I'll follow you to the escape hatch." Outside, the battle was raging. The central compound had become the last line of defense. The humans fought with everything they had, using the planet's own resources to their advantage. The Grothok beasts charged into battle, roaring as they ripped apart drones with their massive claws. But despite their best efforts, the drones were overwhelming. Steel fired his rifle at a drone, watching as it exploded in a burst of sparks and smoke. "Keep moving," he shouted to his team. "Don't stop. We need to keep pushing them back." But the drones were relentless. They adapted quickly, shifting their tactics as they overwhelmed the defenders. As Steel fired, he saw more ships descending from the sky, larger ones this time. The main fleet had arrived, and it was clear that the Council wasn't just trying to defeat them. They were trying to wipe out humanity once and for all. "Commander," Sergeant Alicia Cruz shouted, her voice urgent. "We've got a big one coming in, an assault ship." Steel turned to see the massive shape of an assault ship descending toward them. It was heavily armored and bristling with weapons. It opened fire, sending blasts of energy into the settlement, obliterating walls and buildings in its path. "We need to take that ship down," Steel said, his voice grim. "If we don't, we'll never make it through this." Fox nodded, already moving toward a heavy weapon platform. "I've got an idea, but I'll need cover." Steel motioned to his team. "Give her cover fire. Let's make sure Fox gets that shot." Meanwhile, inside the central compound, Patel, Fox, and the rest of the team scrambled to find a way to disable the fleet's power source. The drones had infiltrated every corner of the settlement, and they needed to act fast if they were going to survive. Patel looked over her shoulder at the battle raging outside. The Grothoks were fighting valiantly, but the numbers were against them. It wouldn't be long before the settlement fell. "Fox," Patel said, tapping into the comms. "Can you see anything? Any weak points in their ships?" "I'm working on it," Fox responded. She crouched behind a large piece of debris, her rifle in hand as she scanned the assault ship. "There's a weak spot in the hull, right under its belly. If I can get a direct hit, I can take out their shields." "Do it," Steel ordered, his voice sharp. "Everyone else, keep fighting. We need to buy her time." Fox steadied herself, taking aim at the weak point of the assault ship. She breathed deeply, her hand steady despite the chaos around her. With a burst of energy, she fired the heavy weapon, watching as the shot soared toward the ship. Time seemed to slow as the shot hit its target. A massive explosion erupted from the bottom of the ship, sending shockwaves through the ground. The assault ship wavered and then crashed to the ground, sending drones scattering in all directions. The humans cheered as the ship went down, but Steel knew it was far from over. The Council wasn't going to give up that easily. At the Council station, Vorlov watched as the battle unfolded on his screen. The humans had just scored a victory, but it was only a small one in a much larger war. "We can't let them keep winning," he muttered, turning to his advisors. "Prepare the next phase. This fight is far from over." Back on Vexus 3, Steel watched the wreckage of the assault ship as the dust settled. The battle was far from won, but the humans had proven one thing. They weren't going to back down. "We've got a chance," Steel said, looking at his team. "But we need to keep pushing. We'll hold this ground. We'll make them regret ever underestimating us." And with that, humanity's fight for survival on Vexus 3 was far from over. The real war had just begun. The battle on Vexus 3 had taken a brutal turn. The assault ship had been downed, but the humans knew that victory was far from assured. Steel's team had fought hard to defend the central compound, but the Galactic Council had proven its relentless determination. The fleet above them continued to hover ominously, with more ships coming into position. "We've got to move fast," Steel said, his voice tense. "The Council won't give up. They'll throw everything they've got at us, and we need to be ready." Lieutenant Karen Fox wiped the sweat from her brow, her eyes scanning the smoke-filled horizon. The battle had slowed for a moment, but everyone knew it was only temporary. The drones were regrouping, and more ships were descending. We've got to hit them where it hurts. We need to disable their fleet, or we're done for. Steele nodded. Agreed. We got one chance to do this, and we need to take it. Meanwhile, inside the central compound, Dr. Anika Patel had been busy studying the data crystals and deciphering the ancient technology they had found in the ruins. The holographic images they had uncovered showed more than just a battle. It revealed a hidden secret of the ancient civilization that had once called Vexus 3 home. The tech we've uncovered is far beyond anything the Council has, Patel said as she stared at the glowing screen. I think I've figured it out. This planet isn't just dangerous because of its environment. It's dangerous because the planet itself can be weaponized. Steele's brow furrowed. Weaponized. Patel nodded. Yes, it's all about control. The ancient species built a system to harness the planet's natural forces and turn them into a powerful weapon. If we can figure out how to access it, we might be able to fight back against the Council's ships. Fox looked up from her station. If we can activate this system, we could turn the tables. But we need to find a way to get close to the central core of the planet. The Council will be all over us if we try. We'll have to move fast, Steele said. We'll need a diversion. Outside, the first wave of enemy drones was regrouping, preparing for another strike. The humans had managed to take down a significant number of drones, but they were still outnumbered. The settlement was in ruins, the walls breached, and the buildings reduced to rubble. But Steele and his team weren't giving up. We need to get to the core, Steele said, turning to Fox. If Patel is right, that's our only chance. We can't let the Council get their hands on the planet's weapon system. Fox nodded. I'll lead the way. We need to get through the western ridge to the control center. It's a long shot, but it's the only plan we've got. The team set out under the cover of darkness, moving swiftly through the ruined settlement and into the dense forest that surrounded them. The Grothok beasts had been deployed to patrol the area, but the drones were still a constant threat. Each step felt like a race against time. As they moved deeper into the forest, they saw flashes of enemy drones in the distance. The air was thick with tension as they neared the western ridge. The control center, located near the base of an ancient mountain, was their goal. But getting there would not be easy. We're almost there, Fox whispered, her eyes scanning the area. Stay low. The drones are watching everything. They continued moving cautiously, their footsteps muffled by the underbrush. But suddenly, a loud noise broke the silence. A drone appeared, flying just above them. It was too close. Steele grabbed Fox's arm and pulled her into the shadows. The drone hovered for a moment, its sensors scanning the area. But then it moved on, flying toward the settlement. That was too close, Steele said, his voice low. We need to hurry. The group pressed on, the western ridge now in sight. They reached the entrance of the control center, a large cave hidden behind a curtain of vines. Inside, they found the ancient control room, its walls lined with strange alien symbols. Patel quickly moved to a nearby terminal and began working with the technology. This is it, Patel said, her voice filled with excitement. I think I can activate the weapon system. But before she could make any progress, the ground suddenly shook. A low rumble vibrated through the cave, and the sound of engines echoed in the distance. Get down, Fox shouted, as the team dove for cover. The entrance to the cave exploded as several drones slammed into the ground, their weapons charging. The humans fought back, using their rifles to take down the drones, but the numbers were overwhelming. They were trapped. Steele's heart raced. They were close, but the Council's forces were closing in. The planet itself seemed to be fighting against them, as if it had sensed the humans' attempt to control its power. We need that system activated now, Steele shouted. We can't hold them off much longer. Patel didn't hesitate. She worked quickly, her hands flying over the terminal as she tried to bypass the security measures. "I'm almost there," she muttered, sweat pouring down her face. "Just a few more seconds." Outside, the enemy fleet was descending, preparing for the final assault. The larger ships were hovering above, ready to unleash their full firepower on the humans. But Steele knew that the only way to stop them was to turn the planet's weaponized forces against the invaders. As the drones continued to swarm around the entrance to the control center, Steele and Fox fought back, providing cover for Patel. They couldn't let the Council take control of this planet, not after everything they had fought for. Suddenly, Patel's voice broke through the chaos. "I've done it. The system is activated." A loud hum filled the air as the ground beneath them began to tremble. The ancient weapons system, hidden for centuries, came to life. A powerful shockwave blasted through the caves, and the drones outside screeched as their systems were overloaded. The hum grew louder, and then, with a sudden burst of energy, the control center's defenses activated. A series of energy pulses shot out from the mountain, striking the incoming fleet and causing explosions in midair. "We did it," Fox shouted, looking up in disbelief as the enemy ships began to falter. "It's working." But the battle wasn't over yet. The Council's fleet was still massive, and they wouldn't stop until humanity was crushed. But for the first time, Steele and his team had hope. They had found a weapon to fight back, a weapon that could change the tide of the war. The battle on Vexus 3 had taken a drastic turn. The energy pulses from the ancient weapon system had struck the incoming fleet, sending shockwaves through the atmosphere. Explosions erupted in the sky as the larger ships faltered, their shields crackling under the powerful blasts. For the first time since the Galactic Council had arrived, the humans had gained the upper hand. But Commander Julian Steele knew it wasn't over yet. The enemy fleet, though damaged, was far from defeated. The remaining drones swarmed around the planet, regrouping and preparing for another assault. The Council had underestimated humanity's resilience once before, but now they were about to learn just how wrong they were. "We can't stop now," Steele said, his voice urgent. "We've made a dent, but they'll come back stronger. We need to hit them again, harder this time." Lieutenant Karen Fox, covered in dirt and sweat, nodded. "We've got a shot at this, but we need to move fast. The control center's energy pulses won't hold them off for long." Dr. Annika Patel stepped forward, wiping the sweat from her brow as she looked over the ancient control system. "We can overload the weapon system," she said. "If we pump more energy into it, we can take down the rest of their fleet. But I need more time to calibrate it." Steele glanced at the sky. The larger ships were descending again, regrouping for the final assault. "We don't have much time," he said. "We need that system up and running now." The team raced through the control center, preparing to launch their final strike. Steele and Fox set up defenses at the entrance, preparing for the inevitable push from the Council's drones. Patel, meanwhile, worked furiously to adjust the settings on the ancient system. The hum of the machines filled the air, and the ground beneath their feet vibrated with power. "We've got company," Fox said, her voice tense as she aimed her rifle at the distant drones hovering toward them. "Here they come." The drones swarmed forward, charging at the entrance with lethal precision. Steele's team opened fire, taking down several of the smaller drones, but more kept coming, faster than they could reload. The humans were outnumbered, and the pressure was mounting. Patel looked up from her station, her eyes wide with worry. "I'm almost there," she shouted over the chaos. "Just a few more adjustments." Fox glanced at Steele. "We need to buy her more time," she said. "I'll hold them off." Steele nodded. "We've got your back." Fox led the charge, sprinting toward the oncoming drones with her rifle raised. Steele and the others provided cover fire as she darted between the rocks and debris, moving like a shadow in the smoke-filled air. The drones were relentless, firing their deadly lasers in every direction. But Fox was fast, darting from cover to cover, her aim sharp as she picked off drone after drone. Meanwhile, Patel continued her work inside the control center, her fingers moving rapidly over the alien technology. The system was complex, but she was determined to make it work. The humans had no choice. This was their last chance. Almost there, Patel muttered to herself, sweat dripping down her face. Just a little more. Outside, Steele and the team continued to hold their ground. The drones were closing in fast, and their numbers seemed endless. But Steele wasn't about to give up. He fired his weapon, taking down another drone, then moved to cover Fox, who was still relentlessly pushing forward. "We can't keep this up forever," Steele said, breathing heavily. "Patel, how much longer?" "I need 2 more minutes." Patel's voice echoed over the comms. "Just 2 more minutes, and I'll have the system fully charged." Steele looked at the sky again. The large ships were descending once more, their engines roaring as they prepared to finish the job. "We don't have 2 minutes," Steele said. "We need to make this last count." With renewed determination, Steele and Fox launched a counterattack. Fox leaped into the fray, moving with precision, taking down drone after drone with swift, deadly shots. Steele led a small team to flank the remaining drones, using the terrain to their advantage. They were outnumbered, but they fought with everything they had. The ground shook as another explosion rocked the area. Steele turned to see a massive ship descending, its weapons charging. It was the Council's final assault ship, and it was headed straight for them. "Not today," Steele muttered, gritting his teeth. Fox spotted a weak point on the ship, its exhaust vents. "Commander, I've got an idea," she shouted. Steele nodded. "Do it." Fox aimed carefully and fired, hitting the exhaust vent with a perfectly timed shot. The ship's engine sputtered, and then, with a deafening roar, the ship exploded in midair. The blast sent shockwaves through the ground, knocking several drones off course. But more ships were coming. Steele knew they couldn't keep this up much longer. Inside the control center, Patel's voice came over the comms again. "It's ready. I've overloaded the system. Get clear." "Clear," Steele shouted, pulling back and motioning for Fox to fall back. The hum of the ancient weapon system grew louder as it powered up. A brilliant burst of energy shot out from the core of the mountain, striking the remaining Council fleet. The blast was so powerful that it rippled through the sky, knocking out their shields and disabling the remaining ships. The drones that had been swarming the settlement fell from the sky, their systems fried by the energy surge. The remaining ships were caught in the blast, spiraling out of control as they exploded in a series of brilliant flashes. Silence fell over the battlefield. The drones were gone, the ships destroyed, and the once mighty fleet of the Galactic Council lay in ruins. Steele and his team stood amid the wreckage, battered but victorious. "We did it," Fox said, her voice filled with awe. Steele nodded, looking at the sky. The battle for Vexus 3 was over. The humans had won. The Council had underestimated them, and now they had paid the price. But Steele knew this victory came at a cost. The humans had proven their strength, their resilience, and their unwillingness to back down. But the war was not over. The Council would regroup, and they would come back. And when they did, humanity would be ready.